Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. We have about 40 people registered, and I don't think they're all here yet. So we're going to get a couple more minutes to allow some more folks to join in. Thanks. All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for tonight's Westside Urban Renewal District information session and virtual open house. I really appreciate you all being here, and more folks might come in as we start. I want to first just thank all of you for attending. Some of you are members of our Urban Renewal Advisory Committee, some are planning commissioners. Really appreciate you making the time, and the general public. Whether you know a ton about urban renewal or this is the first time you've ever heard those words, I hope that you find tonight informational and helpful. My name is Abigail Elder. I'm the city manager for the city of Hood River. I've been here, I think, about a year and a half. I came from the city of Beaverton. It's been such a pleasure to join the city here. And my very first meeting, both with the Urban Renewal Agency and with the City Council, was when the idea of the Westside Urban Renewal District was first introduced and quickly embraced. So I feel very lucky to be kind of on the ground floor of this piece. Joining me tonight will be Elaine Howard. Elaine is truly Oregon's foremost expert in urban renewal. So we're super lucky to have her as our consultant working alongside of us. Thank you, Elaine. And she'll be explaining some of the real technical pieces of urban renewal as a financial tool. Also tonight, we have Dustin Nilsson. He's probably a familiar face to many of you. He is our Director of Planning and Zoning. He been with the city, I think, 6 or 7 years, and so has worked really hard in the city to make it really the welcoming and high quality life place that we all enjoy. Finally, I want to thank Jackie Vanderpoy. She is the Community Engagement Coordinator for the city. Jackie is our moderator today, so she'll be answering Q&A questions or reading them out loud to us. And she's also the advancer of the slides and our technical support. So thank you so much for Jackie. Jackie, can I have the next slide, please? They say we're all, I think, at least the city employees, we're all in City Hall, but we're in different rooms. So it'll be a little bit of catching each other here. See if Jackie can advance the slide. Thank you, Jackie. This truly is intended to be an information session. So we'll have opportunity for questions at the end. You can enter them in the Q&A at any time, or at the end, you'll be able to raise your hand to speak, and then Jackie will unmute you so that you can share your questions. But the most important piece is after tonight, Sometime tomorrow, maybe the next day, you will receive an email link. It'll also be available on our website to take a survey. That's where we really want to get your comments and feedback, because that's the information that we'll be reviewing, analyzing, taking back to council at their June 12th meeting for consideration. And people can fill out the online survey whether they have attended tonight or whether they, excuse me, watch this later, or if they choose not to watch it at all. The survey is open to everyone. Tonight we are live streaming on YouTube. We're also recording on Zoom, so we have lots of backups. We'll put this presentation online for folks to watch. And it will also be translated. So you'll notice that our slides are only in English. So there might be times where we actually read the bullet points of the slides, and that's really to help the translator be able to translate all of our comments and make sure they reflect the PowerPoint. Can I have the next slide, please? Sorry about that. Throughout this process, we have really adopted some principles for implementation. We've wanted to center equity in this work. So early on the staff piece of it, we truly tried to clarify that. And so one of the first ones is the clarity and transparency, that the community understands what we're doing. We want to be clear about the goals and the activities, why we do these things. We want to use plain language, particularly around financial and infrastructure concepts can be really hard to understand. So we want to unpack that and make that accessible to a wider audience. When we think about a comprehensive vision, we want to look at both potential benefits, what good comes from this, but also what harm might come from it. So the box there in purple on the bottom, who benefits, who is harmed, and how can we mitigate that harm? We know that we can't avoid all harm. All actions have consequences. So we really need to be intentional and thoughtful in our actions and seek to lessen that harm. If there's an action government can take to lessen harm, we want to make sure that we consider and try to commit to that. As we commit to equity, we want to ensure that the future district doesn't just benefit those who have traditionally gained, but that we ensure that communities who have perhaps been traditionally marginalized are empowered to participate and also benefit from this urban renewal district. And finally, it is so humbling to be at the beginning of a project like this, because the decisions we make will have an impact for 10, 20, 50 years. So we need to remember not just the folks who live here now, but the residents who will come after us, some of whom may not even have been born yet. So this is a big project and a really important piece that we keep all of these principles in mind as we continue. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Elaine to talk about what is urban renewal.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elaine.
So this is just an overview of the information that we'll be sharing. The part that I'll go over in the beginning is how urban renewal works. After that, we'll talk a little bit about the preliminary Westside District concept, including the possible projects, the district size, and the financing. Then we'll provide information about how to provide input and what the next steps are. This is the potential Westside District. It has approximately 407 acres. You can see that it is on both sides of I-84. So it just takes a little bit of the portion on the other side, on the north side of the freeway, and then the majority is on the south side of the freeway. It goes from, the major roads to look for would be Franklin on the west and Rand Road, and then as Cascade Avenue goes down past Rand Road, and then on the south down to about Belmont Drive. So it's a fairly large area. You can see by looking at the map that a lot of those parcels are undeveloped. So those lines show where the tax lot lines are. So not all of this is within the city of Hood River. Some of it is in unincorporated Hood River, but it is within the urban growth boundary. Next slide. So this is where Jackie is going to pop up a survey. And what we want you to answer is whether you live, work, or own property in the proposed Westside District. That will just help us know the audience who has decided to join tonight. So this is, I think, the first time we've done this live survey. So we're hoping it will work well for us. So if you'll just check a box on here, and then we'll be able to see the results live during the presentation.
I'll give you guys about 20 more seconds to fill out the survey.
So it looks like 33% of the folks listening live in the area, 17% work, 25% own property, live, work, or own property. 8% answered, and then none of the above, 50%. So that just gives us an interesting information about who's watching. So thank you very much for that. Next slide. This is just a very short, compact Urban Renewal 101. Absent new development within a city, property tax growth is limited to 3% per year. And that is due to measures 5 and 50 that were passed a number of years ago. That limits the amount of assessed value growth on any of our properties to 3% per year. Next slide. When an urban renewal area is formed, the assessor calculates the total assessed value of that urban renewal area. This amount is called the frozen base. You can see that indicated by the dark blue on the graph below. Taxing districts forego incremental property growth in the area that's above that frozen base. They continue getting their taxes on that frozen base of assessed value. The revenue stream of the increased property tax revenue over time is diverted to borrow against in order to fund future development projects within the district. Next slide. Public investment spurs private development, generating additional tax growth that otherwise would not have occurred. So you can see in the brighter blue, that is the potential public investment having spurred private growth. And that new revenue, the taxes off of that new revenue, is also reinvested into the district. This allows concentrated investment within that district. Go ahead, Jackie, that was okay. When the district retires in the future, and this district is estimated to go 25 years, the property tax growth is returned to the general tax rolls, and all of the different taxing districts will enjoy that increased assessed value. When you look at this slide, you can see that 3% line that goes above the dark blue on the bottom. That is what growth would be if you didn't have new investment within the area, if you didn't have the infrastructure to allow that new investment to occur. The positive outcomes of having urban renewal is that positive economic growth, high quality public amenities and infrastructure, and additional permanent revenues for public services in the future. Next slide. I'm going to pass this off to Dustin.
So for the purposes of this district as proposed, it's really built on about 7 years of, or actually about 8 years of planning work that has occurred, and focused a lot on the west side as the natural growth area for the city. And really out of this it marks an opportunity to start fulfilling some of the big plans that we have approved in this area. The Parks Master Plan, which was approved in 2020, the city's transportation system plan update, which focused on updates of the West Side, approved in October of 21, and then the city's affordable housing production strategy, which was approved in 2022. Each of these plans went through their own process, included a significant amount of outreach to the public and goal setting. The multi-jurisdictional master plan had directed scientific surveys mailed out to, I believe, 2,000 families. Then it had an open public survey. Transportation system plan came out of almost 2 years of meetings in public, I believe, through the Planning Commission and City Council, a technical advisory committee, a public advisory committee, and really started building up some of the needs for the city and then over the next 25 years. And the affordable housing production strategy was shaped by not only the buildable needs and buildable lands inventory and housing needs analysis, but really took on, became very strategic, using a steering committee, a number of outreach groups, and a strong equity lens in terms of housing needs, and came up with a number of strategies to really start getting houses in the ground in this area where the market couldn't deliver them, and urban renewal was one of those main strategies. I think we're moving on to survey. This next survey comes up given that these projects touched a number of the community and really the county at large. The question is, were you involved in any of them? Have you heard of them in the past? Are these familiar documents to you? And you have an opportunity to choose any of them.
We'll give folks about 20 more seconds again to finish filling out this poll.
All right, there you have it. So these projects are available on the website. They're all officially adopted by ordinance. Really, if you have any interest in knowing more about the components, you can feel free to reach out and we can share them with you. The transportation system plan has a lot of math and a lot of engineering. And I think the other two are a little more accessible when it comes to goals. But certainly, if you want to know more about the plans that we're working on, we're going to talk about the proposed projects coming up here.
Dustin, did you want to touch on the project assumptions?
Sure.
Thanks.
I think we might have shuffled some slides.
We did.
Some of the key projects that are listed in here really focus around leveraging additional funds. As Elaine had mentioned, urban renewal is not the only vehicle here, not the only piece of play. What we try to do, and one of the goals is really to take some of this locally generated funding and use it to leverage additional funds that it's available through the state, federal money. We look to leverage and provide partnerships with developers in terms of cost sharing, and really advance this locally generated money that is directed back in the district to really raise more money. some of the project, it's certainly not going to be able to build every project that's needed in the city or within this area. Some of the smaller projects hopefully become drafted and really come through other funds. Again, development work, independent projects are all available here. So certainly the urban renewal district is only a part of the equation. It's not the total solution, but some of the most regional and impactful projects, such as Cascade Avenue, signalization at major intersections, all become important elements to the entire city, not just to the west side. So really, we try to take some of those larger projects that really can't be accomplished by any single development or any single developer or entity, and really try to use urban renewal as one of the vehicles to help fund and see these projects develop.
Thanks, Dustin. We have the next slide, please. Thank you. As Dustin said, all three of those plans include a lot of projects, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects. So trying to decide what projects to include to be funded through a urban renewal district is really a critical piece. As staff have worked on this, we brought this to council once, got some of their feedback, but they're definitely looking for your feedback as well in that project list. We as staff have really ranked highly projects that provide a backbone for the district, that are opportunities that have the greatest potential for outside funding, and are really those catalyst projects that Dustin just talked about that can allow for other development or other connections. And finally, these are the big and expensive projects that would be really hard to accomplish without urban renewal or other outside funding. And so you can guess that in transportation, a lot of that focus comes around exit 62. That traffic, so a couple elements of that would be a traffic signal at the westbound ramp, extra lanes from the exit to and from Mount Adams Avenue. So those would be extra lanes that would then become right turn only. So from the exit going east, if you were headed toward downtown, there would be a right lane that would exit onto Mount Adams, right? There'd be another lane that would go straight. And similarly, from Mount Adams, there'd be a lane that would go from there to exit 62 and then would become a right turn for eastbound traffic going on the interstate. Similarly connected to those things is probably, if I got a vote, which I do not, my favorite piece is a roundabout at Cascade Avenue and Mount Adams Avenue. So that you can see there'd be kind of two lanes of traffic there with the roundabout that would then kind of skinny back down. That roundabout we know is a critical traffic control piece. It's on the city's transportation funding, but financially constrained list. But I hear from residents all the time, both from county residents and city residents, about how critical it would be to have some kind of traffic control at that intersection. Similarly, we would look to widen Cascade Avenue, not just to Mount Adams, but all the way to Rand Road, if possible. And then the up and down one, the north-south one there, is to construct a Westside Drive from Wine Country Avenue to May Street. And finally, as Dustin said, we want to also have some dollars available to leverage as other projects come up. If ODOT were to provide more dollars, or if we found outside funding, or a developer came and was, we could match something or augment something to really create possibilities. Next slide, please. In housing, I don't have a map. Transportation, very exact, kind of already planned out where it would go. In housing, we're looking at land acquisition. So that would be opportunistic. Where are there opportunities where we could purchase land that then the Urban Renewal Agency could partner with a developer to create housing units. Those could be rentals, or they could be townhomes or single family homes that could be owner occupied. But our goal with all of this would be housing that would be available for residents earning 120% or below of median family income. And 120%, I think, is about $92,000 for a family of four, give you a sense of where we are. This is a little bit similar to a couple years ago, the city purchased 7 acres at 780 Rand Road with the goal of providing, I think, 129 units there. So looking for more opportunities like that as it were to come up. Next slide. Here we have just really kind of putting everything together. We think about this, we don't want just that area to be a road that somebody drives through, or even a house that you like that you live in, but that we really want to create a community. And so we want to have the amenities that really create community and neighborhoods. Part of that, I think, are parks and trails. Oh, lost my slide. Thank you. So we're looking at land acquisition for 3 neighborhood parks. Those are smaller parks, 2 to 4 acres that would really be around a neighborhood. And again, other opportunities, land donation or land that we could purchase that would come up. And then paths, a lot of these are either in the multi-jurisdictional plan or in the transportation system plan. So the ones that have been identified by staff as high potential are a multi-use path from Westside Drive from Wine Country to May Street. Again, that's that vertical one we just looked at. Extending the Westside Community Trail to the existing trail that's on 30th. The Henderson Creek path from Post Canyon Drive to Cascade Avenue. I know the Planning Commission has expressed a desire to see that happen multiple years. They've really prioritized that one. A Ridgeline Trail, which would go from Rand Road to Frankton Road. And again, other opportunities as we work with private developers, as we work with the Park District, the county, other opportunities that might come up. Next slide. I think I'm handing it back to Elaine. Whenever we get to money, it gets to be Elaine's turn.
Thank you. I want to make sure I give credit to Tiberius Solutions, who is the financial consultant who's working with me on the development of all of this information. So they have done a full economic analysis of the area, and we have projected what amount of funds we think could be raised for doing projects within the area over that 25-year time frame. And then looked at those projects that Abigail just went through and divided those out by cost. So the transportation category is the most expensive at about $48 million. The housing is expected to be about $23.3 million. Parks and trails at $9.6 million, and administration at $6.5 million. That total I just saw before we got on tonight should be $87,400,000, not $200,000. But that's just a small typographical error on my part, so please excuse that. So that is how those allocate out. The potential TIF stands for tax increment finance or tax increment funding revenue, is higher than that amount because that looks at those dollars over that full 25-year time frame. And the previous slide looks at those dollars in today's dollars, so not inflated over that time frame. So looking at that 25-year time frame overall, the projections are that there would be about $173.7 million of net tax increment funds. Those net tax increment funds include any interest paid on long-term debt. To be able to do any of those bigger projects, you will have to have incurred debt to get more money up front. And by incurring that debt, then you have to pay that debt back with interest on the debt. That debt is paid back from those tax increment revenues. So again, urban renewal does not increase your property taxes. It is a division of taxes from the other taxing districts. So it's just something to remember as we go through the numbers. The maximum indebtedness is a technical term that's in the statutes that govern urban renewal. And that is the total amount of money over that 25-year time frame that you would be allowed to spend on projects, programs, and administration. So that maximum indebtedness is set now. So it's set based on projections over a 25-year time frame. And you can't exceed that amount unless you go through a similar process as the original development of a plan. So a process that includes a lot of public input and going back through the whole process that we'll talk about here in a minute. So again, this is the amount of funds available over a 25-year time frame. That's not available at year one. It's available as development happens within the area, and you have those tax proceeds that come from that development. Next slide. So if you take that money and bring that back to capacity of funds in 2023 dollars, so taking out the cost of inflation over time, we have $95.1 million to spend. Our project list was 87.4. So we know that we have to allocate either through contingency or know that there are other projects in each of the three categories that were talked about. We had a line item that said other projects, so that other $8 million can get allocated to any of those projects over time as they occur. We all know that none of us can project exactly what's going to happen in 25 years. So we know some of these things are going to change and some costs are going to change. In years 1 through 5, that would be about $20.5 million. And again, that's by borrowing. 6 through 10, you can see that, the amounts are roughly the same over the full time period of the urban renewal area. So projects are also done incrementally to match when those funds are available to spend within the area. And again, one thing that I should have made more clear when I was going over how urban renewal works is that urban renewal is really the implementation tool for those three big planning projects that were discussed. So it's not developing new policy, it is figuring out how to make the policy and the projects that were already identified come to fruition, to get those things accomplished. Next slide. These are the next steps and timeline. So phase 1 of this was a feasibility study just to look at what we thought the amount of tax increment revenue would be, and would it be sufficient to enable the city to accomplish a number of those projects on your project list. That was completed. We're now in phase 2, which is the preparation of the plan and getting public input, knowing that a large amount of public input was included on the building of those 3 plans that had the projects within them. If this gets adopted by City Council, it would freeze the base of the property tax values that all of the other taxing districts receive their money on as of January 1st of 2022, so a year ago. That's if we get the plan adopted prior to September 30th. So that is why that time frame is important to the city. If it's adopted after that, then they lose a whole year of those property tax values. The City Council through the Urban Renewal Agency and we'll review this on June 12th. It will go to the Urban Renewal Advisory Committee on June 20th. It will go to the Planning Commission for a review of conformance to the comprehensive plan on July 10th. The County Board of Commissioners will review the plan on August 21st. They get both a briefing, but they also have a vote on the potential adoption of the plan because there are unincorporated properties within the boundary. The City Council will have a hearing on August 14th to consider a non-emergency ordinance, so that doesn't go into effect until 30 days after adoption, to actually adopt the plan. If the City Council votes on adoption and the County Board of Commissioners also vote on adoption, the district actually begins January 1st of 2024. Slide. So how can you provide input? There will be the survey on the city's website. And as was mentioned earlier, when you all signed up tonight, you gave your emails. So you will be emailed a link to that survey, but it will be on the website so that anybody can participate. So if you have friends, neighbors, other people who you think should take that survey, please let them know. You may email the city recorder at j.gray@cityofhoodriver.gov for any questions, and city staff will be able to respond to those questions. There is a urban renewal agency meeting, the advisory committee meeting, the planning commission hearing, the county commission meeting, and the city council hearing. So at any of those places, you have opportunity to provide additional input. And then tonight, we will also have ability to answer some questions too. Next slide. So here we're at questions and comments. And I think Jackie is going to facilitate this.
That's right. Thank you all for attending and listening to that. It's a lot of information to process. So you have two ways you can ask a question. I think you can either like raise your hand and Jackie can then unmute you, let you know when it's your turn to speak. Or if you provide, if you want to prefer to type in the Q&A section, then we'll watch for those and Jackie or one of us can read them out loud. And there's Jackie. Hello, Jackie. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah. So far I'm not seeing any hands raised or questions in the question and answer box. But we'll give you guys a minute to gather your thoughts. All right, I see we have one question from Jody. I'm gonna give you the mic.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
We can. Hi,
Okay.
Jody. Thanks for being here tonight.
Yeah, so I know because I was on the Urban Renewal Advisory Council for several years. As when these districts are set up, one of the critical things that I remember hearing about was blight. So the purpose of the urban renewal districts, when they were originally set up by the state, my understanding is that they were for community areas that did not have the availability of financing. And these were in very poor, these were for small communities in poor areas. And it just doesn't fit to me for the West Side to fit in that. So has it shifted into just becoming something that when we need more finances, we use urban renewal? Or how does that fit into this?
Thanks for the question, Jody. There is a state definition of that, and I'm going to turn to Elaine to explain that.
Yeah, thank you, Jody. And Jody and I know each other because I went to many of those meetings. So thank you for coming to this meeting.
The urban renewal world is small.
Yeah.
Everybody knows each other.
Yeah.
And Dustin, can I ask you to stay on the screen just as we're doing this Q&A? Thanks.
So blight is defined in the statute, and blight includes poor infrastructure or infrastructure that needs to be upgraded. And within this area, as you saw, over half of the funding is to be allocated to provide infrastructure to allow for a development to occur within an area where development hasn't occurred, either because of the cost of that infrastructure or because the infrastructure doesn't exist at all. So within this area, it totally meets that statutory definition of blight for that reason. There's another definition of blight that is for underdevelopment or undevelopment of property. And within this area, on that original map that we looked at, you can see that a lot of the area is underdeveloped and undeveloped. And it is within the urban growth boundary. So it is expected to provide additional housing and additional commercial uses to the city that as the city grows and as the city grows within that urban growth boundary. So this plan is helping to facilitate that growth within that defined urban growth boundary.
And Elaine, I think housing, the state also added housing in particular and named housing as a justification under the urban renewal statute as well. Like the need for housing and the availability to produce housing did get included in the revised statutes for justification under not necessarily blight, but a cousin of blight as a justification to establish an urban renewal zone.
Okay, so we have 3 more questions that came up on the Q&A. We'll just go in the order that they came in. So how are bicycle lanes addressed in Hood River's transportation planning, and how are electric charge stations addressed?
Dustin, can you take
Yeah.
that one?
As far as bicycle planning, the transportation system plan not only includes projects for motor vehicles, it includes pedestrians and bicycles as well as sidewalks. So the TSP is the document that handles proposed routes for all modes. So bicyclists, pedestrians, as well as vehicles. So by including some of those features, paths and trails from the TSP, they are embedded into this plan. That plan also has an overlap with the Parks Master Plan, where the Parks Master Plan drew from our transportation system plan for pedestrian infrastructure and knitted into it.
Okay, and the next question is, how do we determine what development can be anticipated because of urban renewal versus development that might have occurred regardless? Is this a judgment call, or is there some defined methodology?
Jackie, can you say that one more time?
Yes. How do we determine what development can be anticipated because of urban renewal versus development that might have occurred regardless? Is this a judgment call, or is there some defined methodology?
Some of it can be a little bit of both. It can be judgment call. It also can be methodology. Oftentimes when you get into public-private partnerships, government can do what's called the gap analysis. So if we're going to participate along with the development, either through direct subsidy or in improvements that help a particular development, we can do what's known as a gap analysis to see where the gap occurs and why won't this development work under its own power. Some of the improvements will always have some spillover and residual benefit. When we get to Cascade Avenue, which is one of the hallmark projects, that project is going to touch every single development and probably every single resident and business within the city. It's the only east to west arterial. So if we make improvements to Cascade that start to benefit, it's going to a particular development, it's going to be really difficult to distinguish, where those, where the completely public benefit occurs and where does that stop when it comes to participation from a developer. Most likely we're going to see development contributions to these larger projects as a part of the capital stack. But it is a little bit of both. It's going to be a little bit of both of judgment and kind of direct analysis of whether these projects can go under their own weight or whether they will fail because there's regional infrastructure deficiencies.
All right, and so this is currently the last question, but will this urban renewal district compete for funds against other urban renewal districts in the city or county?
I can start a basic answer for that, but then I'm gonna, Elaine or Dustin, please feel free to jump in. So the city currently has 3 the city had 3 urban renewal districts. The Columbia Cascade District started in 1987. It's the downtown core. That district reached its maximum indebtedness and has closed. It no longer counts toward the acreage of urban renewal districts. We still have some funds there. That's actually how we will be building the stoplight at 2nd and Oak starting after Labor Day. I apologize in advance for all that construction. It's going to be disruptive, I know it. But that district is pretty much closed. We have the waterfront district. That's I think 109 acres. Columbia Cascade 102, waterfront 109 started in 2008. That district will reach its maximum indebtedness in the next year or 2. So that district will also be closing fairly soon. And then our remaining district is the Heights district. That is 96 acres. I don't remember what year that started, 2011 perhaps. But that is a fairly small district. So 25% of the city's acreage can be in urban renewal districts. So I think that we have, I'd say, plenty of acreage, and as as the city council has looked at this, they've wanted to set aside acres for future, should something happen with lot 1, which is the main piece of big parcel by the waterfront, or if there was something else that came up, they really want to be cognizant of that, not have that competition. I don't know much about how this might affect county opportunities for urban renewal.
There's that Hood River County has an urban renewal area. And this wouldn't impact that at all. There wouldn't be any impact on that area's ability to function.
In terms of competition for funds, the funds that are generated within this district can only be spent in this district. They can't be transferred, much like the other districts. The increment and growth and funds that are generated in the Heights cannot be spent outside of this area. So they're really mutually exclusive pools of money. In terms of competition, it's really not unlike projects across the city, whereas we fund Rand Road, it's in competition with other city projects and prioritized. So the urban renewal district doesn't really change that, other than it generates additional new funding opportunities to where it may reduce competition for system-wide funds, system-wide street funds, or development charges, which are really now one of the only ways that we can fund infrastructure. So it probably reduces some competition by introducing a new funding stream into our kind of kit of parts.
Okay, so we got a couple more questions that came in. This first one is in regards to climate change and road construction. So why would we want to use tax money to widen roads, given that we're already in 1 degree of climate change in the world, and just noting that more cars worsen climate change, and in regards to widening of Cascade Avenue?
I don't think it's not just an investment in motor vehicles. It's also an investment in all modes. Again, I think that's an important message here. Also, the investment in transportation system plan is not intended to facilitate new traffic. It's really to address what we have already identified as the traffic that is going to be generated here in the city based on population change over the next 35 years. So urban renewal is not really setting the climate agenda. It's really more responding to a system plan that's been adopted by the city in anticipation of future traffic generation and needs. The signalization, the ability for the system to function at large that's baked into the transportation system plan. If you have a climate kind of question on why would we invest in this, I think that kind of goes back maybe to the transportation system plan as why would we adjust our system plan to accommodate a different standard that has greater emphasis on climate or resiliency in that respect. Not really the urban renewal plan's job to unravel our transportation system plan, if you will.
Okay. What is the city's bond rating? Is there a risk that additional debt decrease it?
The city's bond rating is AA at this time. But the city and the Urban Renewal Agency are actually 2 different entities. So I don't know, Elaine, can you speak to how they are different?
Well, the agencies are different, and it really depends on how you issue your debt. And unfortunately, I don't know all the information for the city and how you do it. In some localities, the city actually guarantees the debt, and you get a lower interest rate because of that. And I don't know if Hood River does it that way or not. So I think that's something we could look into and get back. But typically, urban renewal is a very secure debt because it's based on that property tax increase that happens, and you don't usually issue debt on the hope that a development happens, you issue it based on the amount of money that's actually coming in. And you also have what's called a debt service coverage ratio. So you don't issue debt to cover that full amount of money that you have coming in. You leave yourself a cushion in case there's any decrease. So usually urban renewal debt is very conservative and doesn't harm debt rating. But we can ask the finance director to give us a little more input on that and give information from his perspective.
Thanks, Elaine. I would mention, if you're interested in more just about the city's debt and the kind of the more context of that, in the proposed budget, which is on the city's website, we just finished the budget process last week. There are in the first, I'd say 20 pages, there are a number of pages that explain the city's current debt, what the city can, what the debt limits are for the city, where we can move forward. So I'd suggest checking there or sending us an email. We'd be happy to follow up. And if we can put that as a FAQ on the website, we can do that as well. Thank you for the question.
Okay, another question is, what is the overall estimated housing unit total, private and public, for this proposed area?
In past, estimate was about 1,600 dwelling units. That was not in this area, is a 450 acre area. So roughly the same size.
Jackie, anything else? Do you see any?
We just got another one just
Okay.
came in. Urban renewal funds come from a freeze in taxes that currently go to supporting agencies. What agencies will sacrifice funds to fund these figures in the, maximum or net TIF of 173 million?
Yeah, so there are a number of taxing districts in our community. It's important to note that the educational districts, so I think that includes the school district, the education services district, and the community college, are not affected by urban renewal because their dollars are, I'm going to say, equalized or stabilized at the state level. So they are not impacted. However, the county, the city, the port, the library, Parks and Rec, feel like there's one more that I'm missing there. I know Westside. What's that?
Transit district.
The CAT Transit District. Thank you.
911.
Westside Fire.
Yeah, Westside Fire.
So those will be impacted. Most of those districts have I think everyone has received an analysis of what this would look like for them. They actually received what I consider for them the worst case of if we did 450 acres. So we now have a smaller district size, and we will be getting back to them with that estimate. Some of that is, growth that they would have received, that 3% on a regular basis. Some of that growth would not happen if it were not for urban renewal. So it's hard to calculate really what their foregone revenue is. Elaine, do you have anything else to add to that? Great, thank you for that question. It's a good technical question, and we want to be careful and good partners with our taxing districts. There's a long benefit for all of the taxing districts in the long term, but in the short term, it can we feel anxious that they have a rate that's sustainable and that they continue to do well. When we, as Elaine was going through the process, we have a draft plan. All of the taxing districts have 45 days to comment. I've met or communicated with all but one of those districts, so they're in the loop. But I really appreciate the question. All right, Jackie, we got anything else? Have we worn everybody out?
We don't have anything else. There's still about 5 minutes left if anyone has any burning last questions. Otherwise, I think we can thank everyone for coming and staying with us this whole time and listening, and let you carry on with your night.
Thank you all so much. Really appreciate that. This is a super big deal for Hood River, and I really appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. Think things through. If you wind up having more questions, please contact us. And then, of course, There were the opportunities that Elaine talked about for input. And then this recording will be available on our website in English soon and in Spanish just a little bit later. So appreciate all your time. Thanks and have a great evening. One last, oh, Dan said thank you.